Maria Collins worked quietly in the long empty halls of Fort Ridge Military Base. Every night, when most people were home sleeping, she pushed her cleaning cart from one corridor to another. The sound of her mop gliding over the shiny floor echoed softly in the silence. She was the janitor, the woman everyone passed by without really seeing. To most soldiers, she was just part of the background, like the walls or the floor she cleaned. But Maria didn't seem to mind. She greeted everyone with a small, polite smile and kept doing her work carefully. She wiped the dust off tables, emptied trash bins, and made sure the base looked spotless every morning. The young soldiers often walked past her without a glance. Sometimes they laughed or whispered jokes about her. "Look at her, still cleaning at this age," one of them would say. Another would chuckle. "Bet she's been here since World War II. Maria just smiled softly, pretending not to hear. Inside, she felt the sting of their words but never let it show. She knew their laughter came from ignorance. They saw only the gray hair, the worn-out janitor uniform, and the cleaning gloves. They didn't see the sharp eyes that noticed everything. They didn't see the way she moved, alert, calm, and precise, as if every step had a purpose. If anyone had been paying attention, they might have noticed that she carried herself more like a soldier than a cleaner. Maria had been working at Fort Ridge for almost 2 years. The base was large and busy during the day, full of shouting orders, running boots, and rumbling vehicles. But at night it was a different world. Quiet, still, just the sound of crickets outside and the hum of fluorescent lights inside. Maria liked that silence. It gave her time to think, to remember, and sometimes to forget. Sometimes, when she passed the old shooting range, she paused for a moment. The smell of gunpowder still lingered faintly in the air. It brought back memories she tried to bury, memories of nights far more dangerous than this one. She would close her eyes for a second, take a slow breath, and continue mopping. Nobody would ever guess that the woman who cleaned their floors once held a sniper rifle steadier than most soldiers could dream of. During her breaks, Maria sat outside near the security gate with her thermos of coffee. She always brought her own, black and strong, the way soldiers used to drink it on missions. The guards sometimes joked with her, calling her Aunt Maria. They meant no harm, but they didn't know who she really was. If anyone ever asked about her past, she simply said, "Oh, I've done a few things here and there," and changed the subject. One night, a new group of recruits arrived at the base for training. Young, loud, and full of energy. They treated everything like a game, even their duties. On their first night, they spotted Maria cleaning the hallway near their quarters. One of them laughed, "Hey, Grandma, missed a spot." Another added, "Maybe she's undercover cleaning for the president." The group burst into laughter. Maria just nodded politely and went on scrubbing the floor. What they didn't notice was the tiny scar near her wrist, the kind that comes from years of handling weapons, not cleaning tools. They didn't see how she checked every corner with her eyes before moving forward, like someone trained to spot danger. They only saw a janitor with a mop and gray hair. When she finished cleaning that hallway, she stood quietly by the window. Outside, the moon shone on the parade ground. Rows of rifles were stored neatly in the armory across the yard. Maria's eyes softened as she remembered the weight of one in her hands. The smooth metal, the click of the safety, the steady breath before pulling the trigger. She had once been the best shot in her unit. They had called her Sparrow, fast, silent, and precise. But that was a lifetime ago. Now she swept floors instead of battlefields. And she liked it that way, peaceful, ordinary, no one asking her to risk her life again. Yet sometimes, when she caught her reflection in a glass door, she saw the same old eyes staring back, sharp, unblinking, and ready. The world thought Maria Collins was just a janitor. The base commander knew little about her, just that she was reliable and quiet. The soldiers thought she was harmless. But deep down, Maria knew one thing. She might have left the battlefield, but the battlefield had never really left her. She had seen enough of war to know that peace never lasted forever. So even as she cleaned the floors of Fort Ridge, she stayed alert. Her eyes noticed details others ignored. A soldier leaving a door unlocked, a strange face near the weapons storage, A truck parked where it shouldn't be. She never said anything, but she remembered everything. Every night, as she put her mop away and signed out, Maria looked up at the flag flying above the base. Her hand twitched slightly, almost like a salute, but she caught herself and smiled. She wasn't Sparrow anymore. She was just Maria the janitor. Or at least that's what everyone believed. They had no idea that one day, something would happen inside Fort Ridge. Something that would force Maria to reveal who she truly was. And when that day came, the same people who laughed at her would stand frozen in shock, realizing that the woman they mocked had once been the one protecting them all. But for now, the halls were quiet. The mop swished softly against the floor. And Maria Collins, the woman they ridiculed as just a janitor, continued her work in silence, guarding secrets that even the base commander didn't know. The next few weeks at Fort Ridge Military Base were noisy and busy. New recruits were everywhere, running laps, shouting commands, and trying to look tough. They were young, full of pride, and loved to show off. To them, life at the base was just another adventure. And right in the middle of all that noise moved one quiet figure. Maria Collins, the janitor they all ignored or laughed at. Every evening, when their drills ended, Maria started her shift. She cleaned the same hallways those recruits marched through earlier. Her mop glided across the floor while their laughter echoed down the corridors. They were always joking about her. "There goes the old mop soldier," one of them snickered. "Bet she's been here since the First War," another added. Their voices followed her wherever she went. Maria never replied. She just kept cleaning with the same slow, steady rhythm. Deep down, she felt a small sting each time they laughed. But she had learned long ago that silence was stronger than anger. She wasn't here to prove anything to anyone. Still, a part of her couldn't help but notice how careless and overconfident these young men were. They had energy, yes, but no respect. One evening, as Maria was sweeping near the training field, a group of recruits threw a soda can near her feet on purpose. "Hey, janitor," one of them said, grinning. "You missed a spot." The others laughed loudly. Maria looked at the can, then at them and simply picked it up. "Thank you," she said softly, and walked away. Her calmness only made them laugh harder. What they didn't know was that Maria's quiet eyes had seen more violence and death than any of them could imagine. She had been in places where silence meant survival, where laughter was a luxury. These young soldiers were still living in a world where they believed strength came from shouting louder. Maria knew better. Later that night, when the base was almost empty, she stopped by the break room for a cup of coffee. The base commander, Colonel Harris, was there, looking tired. He gave her a polite nod. "Still working late, Maria?" he asked. "As always, sir," she replied with a small smile. "You put us all to shame," he said kindly. "You never take a day off." Maria chuckled. "Old habits, sir. I like to keep things clean." The colonel smiled and walked away. He didn't know what she really meant. For Maria, keeping things clean didn't just mean floors. It meant order, discipline, awareness. Even as a janitor, she carried those soldier habits with her. When she went home after her shift, she lived in a small rented house just outside the base. Her home was simple, just a table, a chair, and a few photographs. One of them was old and faded. A picture of her younger self in uniform, standing with a group of soldiers. Their faces were proud and strong. On the back of the photo, the words Sparrow Unit 2011 were written in neat handwriting. She touched the picture gently, then put it away in a drawer. Inside her closet, hidden under old clothes, was a locked duffel bag. Inside were medals, maps, and something she hadn't touched in years. A custom rifle scope with her call sign engraved on it. The words were small but clear. Sparrow 07. Maria stared at it for a long time that night. Memories came rushing back, her team, their missions, their bravery, and their final mission, the one that went terribly wrong. She closed the bag and locked it again. "That life is over," she whispered to herself. But deep inside, she knew that kind of life never truly left you. The next day at the base, the same group of recruits spotted her again. They were bored after training and looking for fun. "Hey, old lady," one of them called out. You ever clean up after real heroes? Maria paused and looked at him for a brief moment. Her eyes were calm but sharp, almost too sharp. Heroes come in many forms, she said softly. Some fight battles you'll never see. Then she turned and walked away. The recruit blinked, unsure what to say. His friends laughed to cover their discomfort. But something about her voice stayed with him. There was power in it, a quiet authority he couldn't explain. It wasn't the tone of a janitor. It was the tone of someone who had commanded people before. Later that night, while Maria was cleaning the armory corridor, one of the older officers, Sergeant Brooks, stopped her. You handle those boys pretty well, he said. They're mouthy but harmless. Maria smiled faintly. They'll learn eventually. Everyone does. The sergeant nodded. You sound like someone who's been through training yourself. For a split second, her hand froze on the mop handle. But she quickly recovered and smiled again. Just life's training, Sergeant, she said quietly. Brooks laughed and walked away, not realizing how close he was to the truth. As the night went on, Maria finished her shift and walked down the hallway toward the exit. She stopped by a glass case displaying old rifles and medals from past wars. One of the rifles caught her eye. It had the same design as the one she once used. She stepped closer and traced her finger over the glass. The memories hit her like a wave. The noise, the fire, the orders shouted over radios, the faces of her team. A tear rolled down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. No use remembering, she whispered. That chapter is closed. She walked out into the cool night air. The moon was high, the stars bright. She took a deep breath and looked back at the glowing lights of the base. Despite all the teasing and laughter, she felt strangely at peace. Let them think she was just a janitor. She knew who she truly was, and she didn't need anyone's approval to prove it. What she didn't know was that soon, the base would face something that would bring her past crashing back into the present. And when that happened, every person who had ever mocked her would finally see the truth behind her calm smile and quiet eyes. They would finally understand who Maria Collins really was. The night was quiet in Maria's small house. The clock ticked slowly, and the soft hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence. Maria sat alone at her old wooden table, a single dim light shining above her. Her hands were rough and calloused, but steady as she turned the key to unlock a box she hadn't opened in years. Inside was a faded green duffel bag, the kind soldiers used long ago. For a moment, she just stared at it. Her breath grew heavier, her heart slower. Finally, she pulled the zipper open. Inside lay the pieces of a life she had tried to forget. Medals wrapped in cloth, a folded flag, a photo of 6 smiling soldiers, and a small metal plate engraved with the words, Sparrow Unit 07. Her eyes softened as she ran her fingers over the photo. She could still remember their names: Ethan, Cole, Ramirez, Nadia, and Finch. They were her team, her family in the field. Each of them had a story, each of them had dreams. And now they were all gone. Maria leaned back in her chair and stared at the wall. Her mind drifted back 12 years, to the desert heat, the sound of rotor blades, and the crack of gunfire echoing through the night. Back then, she wasn't Maria the janitor. She was Captain Maria Collins, known by her code name Sparrow, the best marksman in her special operations unit. Her calm under pressure had saved countless lives. People admired her, feared her accuracy, and trusted her instincts. But none of that mattered now. The world thought Sparrow had died in a classified mission. And maybe, in a way, she had. She remembered that final mission clearly. It was supposed to be simple, an intelligence extraction. But something went wrong. The team was ambushed. Shots exploded from every direction. Maria remembered shouting orders, returning fire, trying to protect her team. One by one, her teammates fell. She could still hear their voices, their final words over the radio. When she woke up, she was in a hospital bed. 2 ribs broken, shrapnel in her arm, and silence in her soul. The report said her entire team was lost, the mission classified, and her identity erased from records. They told her to retire quietly, take the compensation, and disappear. She did. She changed her name, moved to a quiet town, and took a job far from anything military, cleaning floors instead of fighting battles. But no matter how many years passed, the memories didn't fade. Sometimes, she would wake up at night, hearing echoes of gunfire in her dreams. Sometimes she would feel the urge to check every door and window like she used to in the field. That night, as she held the photograph, Maria whispered softly, "You're still with me." She closed her eyes, seeing her team's faces smiling back. "I kept my promise," she said. "No one knows who we were. No one ever will." Her cat brushed against her leg, and she smiled faintly, putting the photo back in the bag. Then she noticed something else inside. A small piece of metal wrapped in cloth. She carefully unwrapped it. It was the barrel from her old rifle. The metal still carried faint scratches and marks. But what caught her attention was the engraved code on it. State Route 07. That code wasn't just her call sign. It was her mark, the sign of her unit, Sparrow Recon. Only members of that team used those markings. Seeing it again made her chest tighten. It was a reminder that no matter how far she ran from her past, it was always part of her. Maria placed the rifle piece gently on the table. She stared at it for a long time, her mind lost in thought. She wondered what her old commander would think if he saw her now, scrubbing floors in a uniform with someone else's name stitched on it. She smiled sadly. "He'd probably tell me I'm still watching over people," she murmured. A sudden gust of wind pushed open the window, scattering papers from the table. Maria quickly got up to close it. Her instincts kicked in fast, sharp, automatic. She scanned the darkness outside before locking the latch. Even after all these years, her body still reacted like a soldier's. She sighed. "You never really stop being one, do you?" She sat back down and packed the bag carefully again. Before closing it, she hesitated, then added one more thing. A folded note that had been with her since the day she left the army. On it was written, "When the world forgets who you are, remember who you were." She locked the bag and pushed it back under her bed. Then she stood, stretched her sore arms, and went to make tea. As she waited for the kettle to boil, her eyes wandered to the wall where her janitor uniform hung. It looked so ordinary, dull gray with a faded badge and cleaning gloves in the pocket. Yet beneath that simple outfit lived a woman who had once held the fate of missions in her steady hands. Maria smiled softly. She liked being ordinary. No one expected anything from her now. No pressure, no danger. Just peace. But deep down, a small part of her new peace never lasted forever. She could feel it, that quiet tension in the air, like before a storm. Something inside her whispered that soon, she might have to remember everything she tried to forget. That night, before sleeping, she looked at the bag one last time. Her reflection in the mirror looked calm, but her eyes still held the same fire, the same sharp focus of the sniper once called Sparrow. She turned off the light and lay down, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her past wasn't finished with her yet. Somewhere deep inside Fort Ridge Base, something was changing. And when it came to the surface, Maria Collins, the janitor, would no longer be invisible. The world would once again see the woman behind the mop, the soldier who had once been a ghost of the battlefield. And this time, no one would laugh at her again. It was a cold, quiet night at Fort Ridge Military Base. The moon hung low over the buildings, and most of the soldiers were asleep. Only the night guards and a few janitors were awake. Maria Collins was one of them, moving silently through the empty halls with her mop and bucket. The sound of her footsteps mixed softly with the hum of the lights above her. Everything felt peaceful, but Maria had a strange feeling in her chest, like something wasn't right. She stopped for a moment and looked around. The hall was empty, but her instincts told her something was off. Years of military training had given her a sixth sense for danger. She tried to shake it off and continued mopping, but that uneasy feeling stayed. As she reached the storage wing, she heard a faint sound. A metallic click, like a door being unlocked slowly. She froze. At that hour, no one was supposed to be there except her. She turned off her mop bucket's wheels to stay quiet and listened carefully. There it was again. A soft creak, followed by whispers. Maria's heartbeat quickened, but her hands stayed steady. She moved closer, her footsteps silent. Through the small glass window of the supply room door, she saw two figures dressed in black uniforms that didn't belong to the base. They were moving fast, their faces covered, carrying weapons. Her stomach tightened. These weren't soldiers. They were intruders. She quietly backed away, her mind already working like it used to in missions long ago. She remembered every escape route, every blind spot in the corridor, every security code. It all came rushing back as if she'd never left the field. She reached for her radio, but janitors didn't have military radios anymore. Then she remembered something. One of the guards she knew, Officer Patel, always left his spare radio at the end of the hallway when charging it. Moving quickly but quietly, Maria went to the corner room. Sure enough, the radio sat on the desk, the green light blinking. She picked it up and pressed the side button. "Security command, this is maintenance section," she said calmly, her voice low but firm. "Possible breach in storage wing 3. 2 unidentified armed men inside. Repeat, armed intruders." There was silence for a moment, then a voice came through. "Who is this? Identify yourself." Maria hesitated for a split second, then said softly, "Call me Sparrow." The guard on the other end went quiet. The name was from a unit that officially didn't exist anymore, but every senior officer knew the legend. "Copy that," the voice finally said. "Lockdown in progress." Maria's heart pounded, but she didn't wait. She couldn't just hide and wait for help. The intruders were heading toward the weapons lab. She could tell by their direction. She remembered the layout perfectly. That lab held advanced rifles and prototypes that couldn't fall into the wrong hands. She picked up a metal wrench from her cart, the only thing nearby that could be used as a weapon, and moved toward the lab corridor. Her steps were silent, her eyes sharp. She peeked around the corner and saw one of the intruders standing guard while the other tried to hack the lab door. Maria crouched low, remembering her training. Slow breathing, stay unseen, wait for the right moment. When the guard turned his head slightly, she moved fast. In 2 quiet steps, she came up behind him and hit the side of his neck with the wrench. He dropped instantly, unconscious. The other man spun around, startled, and raised his gun. But Maria kicked the weapon out of his hand before he could fire. The two struggled briefly, but Maria's strength and precision overpowered him. She pushed him against the wall, twisting his arm until he dropped. He groaned in pain as she grabbed his collar and yanked off his mask. His face was young, nervous, maybe 25. "Who sent you?" she demanded. He didn't answer. His eyes widened as he saw her face clearly. You're not supposed to be." Maria didn't wait for him to finish. She pulled the rifle from the floor and checked its code automatically, something she used to do in combat. Her eyes froze. The rifle's metal gleamed faintly under the lights, and on the barrel was engraved a familiar code. State Route 07. Her breath caught in her throat. That was her rifle code, her old unit's mark. But how did this weapon end up here, in the hands of intruders? Her hands trembled slightly as memories rushed back. The last time she'd seen a weapon like that, it was during her team's final mission. Before she could think further, alarms blared across the base. Red lights flashed, and a robotic voice echoed through the speakers. "Security breach detected. All units respond." Footsteps thundered from the other side of the hall as armed soldiers came running. The young intruder tried to run, but Maria tripped him easily and pressed the rifle to his chest. "Stay down," she said coldly. When the soldiers arrived, they froze for a second at the sight before them. The base janitor, standing tall, holding a rifle like she'd done it her whole life, with 2 unconscious intruders at her feet. Who did this?" one of them asked, stunned. Maria looked at them calmly, her gray hair slightly messy, eyes focused. "They were trying to breach the lab," she said simply. "You should check the rest of the wing. There might be more." The young soldiers exchanged confused looks. How did a janitor know how to disarm trained attackers so cleanly? And how did she even handle that weapon like a professional? When the base commander, Colonel Harris, arrived moments later, his face went pale as he saw the rifle in her hands. He recognized the code immediately, State Route 07. That code was supposed to be erased from all records. Only one person ever used it. He looked at her in disbelief. Maria, where did you get that rifle? Maria's expression didn't change. She gently placed the weapon on the table and replied, "It was here, sir. They dropped it." The colonel's eyes locked onto hers, searching for answers. For the first time, Maria felt the weight of her past pressing on her again. She hadn't meant for anyone to see this side of her. Not ever again. But tonight, fate had decided otherwise. The woman they mocked as just a janitor had just saved the base from disaster. And her old life, the one she buried, was starting to rise from the shadows once more. The sound of alarms still echoed through the halls of Fort Ridge. Red lights flashed on every wall, and soldiers ran in all directions. But in the middle of the chaos stood Maria Collins, calm and still, holding the rifle that carried the code state Route 07. The young soldiers who had once laughed at her now looked at her in silence, unsure of what to say or do. The woman they used to call just a janitor had just disarmed 2 intruders and stopped a possible attack. Alone. Maria didn't say a word. Her eyes scanned the area, sharp and alert, as if her mind had switched into another mode. The old soldier mode she had buried years ago. Every sound, every movement, she noticed it all. It was instinct, not effort. Colonel Harris, the base commander, stepped closer. He looked both surprised and confused. "Maria, are you hurt?" he asked, his voice uncertain. She shook her head slightly. "No, sir. But they weren't working alone," she said in a calm, firm tone. "They were trying to access the weapons lab." The colonel frowned. "How do you know that?" Maria hesitated. She couldn't exactly say that she had studied the patterns of movement and recognized tactical formations. That would raise too many questions. So she simply replied, "I saw where they were headed." The colonel looked down at the rifle in her hands, the one with the engraved code. His face turned pale. "Where did you get this weapon?" he asked quietly. Maria handed it to him carefully. "It belonged to them," she said. "But that code, it's old. Very old." He examined the engraving State Route 07. His eyes widened slightly. That code had been erased from official records long ago. Only one person was ever associated with it. But that couldn't be possible. Could it? Before he could question further, more soldiers entered, reporting that the other intruders had escaped through the outer fence. The colonel ordered a lockdown, then turned back to Maria. "You saved a lot of lives tonight," he said softly. Maria didn't answer. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her face calm. She wasn't thinking about glory or recognition. Her mind was already analyzing what she had seen, the weapons they carried, the way they moved. They weren't random criminals. They were trained. And the code on the rifle proved something worse. Someone inside the system had connections to her past. That night, after the situation was under control, Maria sat alone in the security office while an officer took her statement. She spoke simply and clearly, leaving out everything that would expose who she really was. When the officer asked how she managed to stop 2 armed men alone, she just smiled faintly and said, "Guess I've been around danger long enough to know what to do." The officer chuckled awkwardly, thinking she was joking. But Maria's eyes told another story. When she finally returned to her cleaning area, she found her cart still standing in the hallway. The mop had fallen over, and the bucket had spilled water across the floor. She stared at it for a moment, then quietly cleaned it up like nothing had happened. To anyone else, it was just another night. But to her, something inside had shifted. The quiet janitor was gone. The soldier inside her had woken up again. The next morning, the base was buzzing with rumors. Everyone was talking about the janitor who took down 2 intruders. Some called it luck, others called it bravery. But no one really knew what happened, except Colonel Harris. He couldn't get that code out of his head. State Route 07. He remembered the classified files, the stories of a sniper named Sparrow who disappeared years ago after a failed mission. He remembered how the entire unit was marked, erased. He decided to check. Late that afternoon, he went into his office, opened the restricted archives, and typed in the old code, State Route 07. The system hesitated, then showed one result: Captain Maria Collins, Sparrow Unit. His eyes widened. "It's her," he whispered. Meanwhile, Maria was in the mess hall, drinking her usual black coffee. A group of recruits entered, the same ones who used to mock her every night. They looked nervous now. One of them finally walked up to her. "Ma'am, we heard what you did last night." Maria looked up slowly, her calm eyes meeting his. "I just did what needed to be done," she said softly. The recruit swallowed. "We shouldn't have. We didn't know." She smiled faintly. "It's all right. Sometimes people only see what's on the surface." The young man nodded awkwardly, then left with his friends. They whispered among themselves, still unsure how to act around her. The same woman they once laughed at now felt like someone they should salute. Later that evening, Colonel Harris found her cleaning near the East Corridor. "Maria," he said quietly, "I think we need to talk." She paused, leaning on her mop. "About the intruders?" "About you," he replied. His tone was calm but serious. "I ran the code. I know who you are." For the first time, Maria's expression changed. Her eyes lowered, and a small sigh escaped her lips. "That was a long time ago, sir," she said. He nodded slowly. "Maybe, but it looks like your past has caught up with us. That rifle shouldn't exist anymore. Someone brought it back. And that means someone out there knows you're still alive." Maria stayed silent for a moment, then said quietly, "Then they'll come again." The colonel looked at her, realizing what that meant. The janitor standing before him wasn't just a woman with a mop. She was a trained operative, maybe the best sniper the army ever had. He finally understood how she had handled the intruders so easily. "Maria, or should I say Sparrow," he said softly, "you just saved this base, and we're going to need you again." She looked at him, her eyes calm but tired. "I'm not that person anymore, sir," she said. "I left that world behind." He gave a faint smile. "You might have left it, but it hasn't left you." Maria didn't answer. She turned away and continued mopping, but inside, she knew he was right. The soldier in her was awake again. And somewhere beyond the walls of Fort Ridge, someone was preparing for the next move. The peace she had built for years was beginning to crumble, and the world was about to remember the name Sparrow once more. Night had fallen again at Fort Ridge, but this time the base didn't feel the same. The once lively training grounds were now surrounded by guards and searchlights. Soldiers whispered about hidden threats and mysterious intruders, but one name traveled quietly through the ranks: Maria Collins. Some said she was a secret agent. Others said she was a retired soldier. But none of them knew the full truth. Maria tried to go back to her normal routine, mopping the hallways, cleaning the offices, and staying invisible like before. But something inside her had changed. Every sound made her alert. Every unknown face made her cautious. She knew the attack wasn't random. It was a message. Someone from her past had finally found her. As she walked toward the storage room, she noticed a small camera light blinking in the corner. One that wasn't supposed to be there. She quietly reached up, unscrewed it, and found a small foreign chip attached to the back. Her hands tightened. That kind of tech wasn't military issued. It was surveillance grade, something used only in special operations. She hid the device in her pocket and left the area calmly, pretending nothing had happened. But her mind was racing. Whoever placed that camera wasn't just spying on the base, they were tracking her. Meanwhile, Colonel Harris was reviewing reports in his office when she knocked on the door. "Come in," he said. Maria entered silently and placed the chip on his desk. "Found this in the storage corridor," she said. He frowned, picking it up. "That's not ours." "Where did you?" "I told you," she interrupted gently. "They'll come again. And this time they're not testing the base. They're watching me." The colonel leaned back in his chair, thinking. "Maria, or Sparrow, whatever you want to be called now. If they're watching you, we need to move you to a safe house." She shook her head. "No, sir. If I disappear, they'll know I'm aware. They'll strike harder and faster. Let them think I'm still just a janitor." The colonel stared at her for a moment. "You're risking your life." She gave a faint smile. It's not the first time. That night, she went back to her small quarters near the maintenance wing. It was simple, one bed, one desk, a few personal items. But inside her locker, behind the cleaning supplies, was a hidden box. She pulled it out quietly and opened it. Inside lay an old photo of her special ops team, the Sparrow unit, 6 members smiling in front of a helicopter. She ran her finger over one face in particular, Captain James Ryder, her former partner. He had disappeared years ago, presumed dead during their final mission. But the rifle code state Route 07 and the type of intruders she'd seen, it all pointed toward something she didn't want to believe. Could James still be alive and working for the other side? A soft noise snapped her out of her thoughts. She instantly turned off the light and moved to the wall. Footsteps, slow, measured, outside her door. She quietly reached under her bed and pulled out a small hidden pistol, her emergency weapon. She waited, holding her breath. The footsteps stopped. Then a faint voice came from the other side of the door. "You can't hide forever, Sparrow." Her heart froze. It was a man's voice, low and familiar. Then silence. She quickly opened the door, but the hallway was empty. Only the flickering light bulb swung gently overhead. She looked down. A small note had been slipped under her door. She picked it up. It read, "The past never forgets." The next morning, she met Colonel Harris again. "They were here," she said firmly. "Someone came to my quarters." She placed the note on his desk. He read it, then looked up at her. "You think it's someone you know?" "I don't think," she said quietly. "I'm sure." The colonel sighed. "Then we need to prepare. If this man, whoever he is, has your level of training, we're dealing with a serious threat." Maria nodded. "I'll need access to the armory and the base blueprints." The colonel hesitated for a moment, then gave her a long look. "You're asking me to let a janitor have military access," he said. She smirked slightly. "Then don't. Let Sparrow have it." By evening, Maria had changed. She wasn't wearing her cleaning uniform anymore. She stood in front of the mirror, dressed in tactical black, her hair tied tight, her expression sharp and cold. The face of the sniper the army once called Sparrow. As she loaded her gear, memories flooded back. Nights in the desert, missions in the snow, the echoes of gunfire and silence of betrayal. She had walked away from that life to find peace. But peace had come to find her, only to break it apart. At midnight, she climbed onto the roof of the barracks and scanned the perimeter through binoculars. The air was still. Then she saw it. A small red light flashing in the woods beyond the fence. A signal. She turned on her radio. "Colonel, they're here," she whispered. Within minutes, sirens blared again. Soldiers scrambled into position, trucks blocked exits, and floodlights lit up the trees. But before the troops could reach the woods, an explosion shook the ground. Maria shielded her eyes from the blast and shouted, "Get everyone back!" The blast was followed by silence. Then a single shadow stepped out from the smoke. He moved with calm precision, like someone who had done this 100 times before. And when Maria's eyes met his through the scope of her rifle, her breath caught in her throat. It was him, Captain James Ryder, the man she once trusted with her life. The man she had believed died years ago. He smirked, lowering his weapon slightly. "Hello, Sparrow," he said over the comms, his voice cold but calm. "Did you really think you could clean your past away?" Maria froze, her finger on the trigger. The soldiers around her waited for her command. But she couldn't move. Not yet, because now it wasn't just about survival. It was personal. The woman they once called just a janitor was about to face the ghost of her own past, and the battle that would decide not just her fate, but the truth behind everything she thought she had escaped. Smoke filled the air, and the ground still shook from the explosion. Soldiers shouted orders, taking cover behind trucks and walls. But Maria stood frozen on the rooftop, her rifle steady, eyes locked on the figure walking calmly out of the smoke. The lights illuminated his face, the same sharp jawline, the same cold eyes she remembered from years ago. Captain James Ryder. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The world around them blurred, and it felt like time had stopped. Maria's breath caught in her chest. The man she once trusted more than anyone was now standing there, holding a weapon against the same flag they once swore to protect. "James," she whispered under her breath, almost not believing her own eyes. His voice came through the radio again, calm and controlled. "It's been a long time, Sparrow." Maria tightened her grip on her rifle. "You're supposed to be dead." He smiled faintly. "Dead men make the best ghosts." Before she could respond, he raised his weapon and fired. Not at her, but at one of the watchtowers. The explosion lit up the night again, shaking the base. Soldiers screamed and ran for cover. Maria jumped down from the roof and rolled onto the ground, her instincts kicking in. She grabbed her earpiece. "Colonel Harris, it's Ryder. He's leading the attack." "What? Ryder? As in Captain Ryder?" The colonel's shocked voice came back. "Yes, sir. He's alive, and he's not alone," Maria said, ducking behind a wall as bullets hit the metal beside her. She peeked out just in time to see shadowy figures spreading through the perimeter. Ryder's team, well-trained and fast. "Evacuate the armory," she ordered the nearby soldiers. "They're going for the weapons stock." Her voice carried authority, and even though she was still technically a janitor, the soldiers obeyed without hesitation. Something about her tone, her presence, made them trust her. She moved like a ghost through the chaos, reloading her rifle, scanning every corner. Her mind worked faster than fear, calculating distance, timing, and the best way to stop Ryder. She knew his tactics. He had trained her once, and now she had to use everything he taught her against him. Down near the fence, she spotted him again. He was calm, giving silent hand signals to his men. She took a deep breath, raised her rifle and aimed. Her finger rested gently on the trigger. But then Ryder looked up directly at her. Even from far away, their eyes met through the scopes. And for a split second, she saw something in his eyes. Not hatred, but sadness. He mouthed something she could barely make out. "You shouldn't have stayed." Then he threw a smoke grenade and vanished into the mist. Maria cursed under her breath and ran forward, covering her mouth as the thick white smoke filled her lungs. "Ryder!" she shouted. "You don't have to do this." A voice answered from the fog, low and bitter. "You think you know why I'm here? You think I'm the villain? Look around, Sparrow. We were never heroes. We were just tools." She stopped, her heart pounding. "What are you talking about?" He appeared a few feet away, his rifle lowered. The look on his face was half anger, half pain. "Do you even know what that mission was about? The one that killed our team," he said. "They told us it was a rescue op. But it wasn't. We were sent to clean up their mistakes, to erase innocent people who knew too much. They used us, Maria. And when I found out, they left me to die." Maria shook her head slowly. "That's not true." "It is," he said quietly. "And now I'm here to make them answer for it." Before she could reply, a bullet whizzed past, missing her by inches. Ryder turned, shouting an order to his men. The gunfire started again, breaking the tense silence. Maria dove behind a crate, firing back. Her mind was spinning. What if he was telling the truth? What if their past mission wasn't what she thought it was? Colonel Harris's voice came through the radio again. "Maria, we've contained the north side, but the intruders are inside the main compound." She wiped sweat from her forehead. "Understood, sir. I'm going after Ryder." "Negative," the colonel barked. "He's too dangerous." "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm the only one who can stop him." She cut the connection and moved silently through the hallways. Her steps were light, careful. Every corner could be an ambush. The lights flickered from the earlier blast, creating long shadows. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. Then she saw him again, standing near the weapons vault. He was typing something into the keypad, a code only a top-level officer would know. "Don't move," she said, aiming her gun. He stopped but didn't raise his hands. "Still quick as ever," he said softly. "You were always the best shot in the unit." "And you were the best liar," she replied. "Step away from the door." He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. You still think they deserve your loyalty? The same people who erased us like we never existed. She hesitated. Not all of them. Some are still good. Some are still trying to fix things. Ryder's eyes softened for a moment. You really believe that, don't you? Before she could answer, he hit a switch on his wrist device. The door behind him opened, revealing crates filled with weapons and old classified files. He grabbed a hard drive and backed away. You'll see the truth one day, Sparrow, he said. And when you do, you'll understand why I had to do this. Maria fired, but he was faster. The bullet grazed his shoulder as he ran through the exit. Ryder! She shouted, chasing him down the corridor. He disappeared into the night again, leaving only smoke and silence behind. Maria stopped, breathing heavily, staring at the trail of blood he left on the floor. She knew this wasn't over. Ryder had stolen something, and whatever was on that hard drive could change everything. She looked up at the dark sky outside and whispered, "What are you trying to show me, James?" The next phase had begun. The truth was buried somewhere in her past, and Ryder had just ripped open the first layer. This was no longer a fight between soldiers. It was a war between truth and betrayal, and Maria was standing right in the middle of it. Rain poured heavily over Fort Ridge that night. The sky was dark, the ground muddy, and the smell of smoke still lingered from the earlier explosions. The base was under lockdown again. Soldiers moved cautiously, their faces tense. But Maria Collins, or Sparrow as she was once known, stood alone near the command tower, her uniform soaked, her rifle hanging by her side. She had just spent the last 2 hours helping clear the wreckage and checking the wounded. But her mind wasn't on the chaos around her. It was on one person, Captain James Ryder. He had escaped again. And this time, he had taken something that could destroy everything. The stolen hard drive contained secret files about old missions that were supposed to have been erased from history. Maria knew those files had the power to expose dark truths and end lives. Colonel Harris approached her quietly. "We've sealed the outer gates," he said. But Ryder's team had help. Someone on the inside gave him access codes. Maria looked up at him, her eyes tired but steady. "You think he's gone?" she asked. "I think he's still close," the colonel replied. He left blood traces heading toward the old training ground. Maria nodded slowly. "Then that's where it ends." The colonel frowned. "You're not going alone." She gave a faint smile. "You can't stop me, sir. This isn't your fight anymore." Before he could argue, she turned and walked into the night, disappearing into the mist. The old training ground was silent, abandoned years ago after a fire. The wooden structures were half burned, and the rain made everything shine with a ghostly reflection. Maria moved carefully, every step deliberate, her rifle ready. She could hear her own heartbeat, slow, steady, trained. A faint sound broke the silence. A click. She froze instantly, recognizing the sound of a rifle being loaded. "You always were too good at tracking," Ryder's voice said from the shadows. Maria turned slowly. He stood near one of the burnt-out towers, his shoulder bandaged, his gun in his hand. The rain dripped from his hair, but his eyes were as sharp as ever. "You're bleeding," she said softly. He smirked. "I've had worse. You should know." "Why are you doing this, James?" she asked, her voice calm but heavy. "You could have walked away. You could have started over." He laughed bitterly. "Walk away? After what they did to us? They buried our names, our missions, our friends. They called us heroes when it was convenient, then erased us like dirt when we became inconvenient." Maria shook her head. "We did what we had to do. We followed orders." "Exactly," he snapped. "Orders that killed innocent people. You remember the village, don't you? The one we were told was hiding terrorists. There were no weapons there, Maria. Just families, children, and they made us destroy it anyway." Maria froze. She remembered the mission she never spoke of, the one that haunted her nightmares. But she had forced herself to forget, to survive. Her hands trembled slightly as she whispered, "I didn't know." Ryder's voice softened. "None of us did, until it was too late. I tried to expose it, That's why they left me behind. That's why they wanted me dead. Maria lowered her weapon slightly. So all this, the attack, the intruders, the stolen files, it was your revenge? He shook his head. Not revenge. Justice. The world deserves to know the truth. She stepped closer. You think exposing it will bring peace? It'll start a war. Thousands could die because of what's in that drive. Ryder's expression flickered with doubt, but he quickly hid it. Then maybe war is what they deserve. Lightning flashed above them, and for a moment, their faces were lit in the storm. Two soldiers from the same bloodline of battle, now standing on opposite sides of truth. Maria took a deep breath. You were my brother, James. My partner. You taught me everything I know. Don't make me your enemy. He looked at her with sadness. I never wanted you to be my enemy. But you chose their side the day you stayed silent. Before she could speak, he raised his rifle and fired. The bullet missed her by an inch. Instinct took over. She dove behind a wall and returned fire. Sparks flew as bullets hit the metal and concrete. The rain made everything slippery, but neither of them stopped. It was a deadly dance. Two ghosts fighting not just each other, but their pasts. Stop, James, she shouted. This isn't you. You don't know me anymore, he yelled back. She moved quietly through the ruins, using every ounce of her training. She saw his shadow move near the tower and took aim. But then she hesitated. She couldn't kill him, not like this. Ryder turned, gun raised, but his finger froze on the trigger. For a second, their eyes met again, the years of friendship and loss flashing between them. Then a gunshot echoed, but not from either of them. A sniper from the base perimeter had fired. The bullet struck Ryder in the chest. He stumbled back, eyes wide, dropping the hard drive into the mud. James! Maria ran forward, catching him as he fell. Blood mixed with the rain on his uniform. He looked at her weakly, half-smiling. Guess. They still watch their ghosts, he whispered. Don't talk, she said, pressing on his wound. We'll get help. He shook his head faintly. Too late for that. Take it, the drive. Make it right, Sparrow. Her eyes filled with tears. You could have told me sooner. I tried, he whispered, his voice fading. But you were too busy cleaning other people's messes. A weak chuckle escaped his lips. Still the best shot I ever knew. And with that, his hand went limp. The rain washed over his face as his eyes slowly closed. Maria sat there for a long moment, holding his body, the sound of thunder echoing in the distance. She picked up the hard drive from the mud and stared at it. The truth, the one he died for, was now in her hands. By the time the soldiers arrived, she was standing again, soaked, silent and steady. Colonel Harris approached, his face full of questions. Is he gone? She said quietly. And he was right. He looked confused. Right about what? She handed him the drive. About the lies. About the mission. I'll finish what he started. The right way. The colonel stared at her, then nodded slowly. What are you going to do now? Maria looked toward the horizon, where the rain was beginning to fade. Clean up, she said softly. Like I always do. Days later, she was gone from Fort Ridge. No one knew where she went. Some said she resigned. Others said she was reassigned to a secret unit. But one rumor spread quietly, that she took the truth with her, and somewhere out there, Sparrow was making things right in her own way. The soldiers still spoke of her, the janitor who stopped a war, the woman who faced her own past and didn't run. And though no one saw her again, they said that whenever a storm rolled over the base, a single word could be heard whispered in the wind. Sparrow.